But right now, I want to introduce the President and General Counsel of the Floating Hospital, Sean Granahan. But you know, the Floating Hospital has been around since 1866, and I think they've serviced over 5 million children since then, 5 million children and their carers since then. And of course, it had a role to play in 9/11, right? The ship was docked, and this is from Neil O'Dowd, because he called me this morning to wish me luck, and he said, "Talk about a guy who leaves a really good job as a corporate lawyer and to take on something that, you know," and he said, ask him about the passion and where that drive comes from. And you've been with the Floating Hospital for 20 years now,
20
right?
years. Yep.
Yep.
20 years.
So
It's you know, it's interesting. You don't really make the transition from a corporate world to a service world, you know, through a decision. You know, that one of Neil's questions to me back and forth was, you know, when did you decide to do this? And it really doesn't work that way. You know, it's not like a Cecil B. DeMille movie where the bush starts on fire and then, you know, you all of a sudden you hear a voice in the sky that says, you know, get off your wretched arse and do something good for the world. It doesn't really work that way. What for me in my experience was, I just happened to be lucky to work with people who are better than me. You know, they get up every day, they go out and they make sure that the women and children that come in and out of the hospital are given the best care that they possibly can. And that might mean clothes, it might mean food, it could mean vaccines, because we are essentially a safety net and a relief agency for the poorest children and women in New York City, which we've been for, you know, 155 plus years. And so, you know, New York City currently faces and has been facing a humanitarian crisis among women and children. And these women and children have nowhere to live. They bounce around from shelter to shelter. They experience violence on a scale that most of us really can't imagine. And they need somebody.
some of this makes me think of like our great hunger, and back in 1866 we'd still have some of that ongoing poverty from the Irish who came in that first wave. And I know that your ancestors are from Mayo, and your father John is here. Where does that, you know, as I said, I don't know if I did say, but Mayo was hardest hit in one of the counties that was hardest hit. Does that heritage play into your?
I think it does, because there's when we think about the waves of migration that came across and the troubles that the families back in Ireland faced coming over here, they faced a 63% death rate just on the travels back and forth between Ireland and the U.S. And when they landed here in New York City, they went to the 5 Points. And, you know, the floating hospital was the provider of care and relief to the 5 Points. That's where we started. That's how we got our first patients. We were seeing 900 kids a day on a ship where we'd take them out. We would provide them with care. We'd provide them with food. We'd provide them with anything they need, just like we do today. So I think, you know, there are very few Irishmen that don't like the sea, right? It's odd, but we were a maritime organization that understood the value of the sea, understood the value of bringing families out of a difficult urban environment and taking them someplace else. And we do that today. We do that through our camps. We do that through where we focus a lot of energy on teens, because we see teens as the future and preteens as the future. So we try to change their trajectory wherever we can, but we do it in the context of healthcare plus relief. Thanks.
So Neil has this one statistic here. He says that in your notes, 24% of the homeless in the U.S. are in New York City. Is that
for homeless families? That's actually It's true. It's probably higher when you really look at it, because families migrate to us as they have for 100+ years. New York City is the center of opportunity. Everyone feels that New York City is the place to go. So we have an interesting mix of what we call immigrants. So we have actual New Yorkers, and then we have people from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all across the Panhandle. They come to New York City because they think they're going to find a better way to get out of the poverty that they're in. And so they also come to us from other countries. One of our current waves that we were just talking about was Russian. And in a time when we talk about the Ukrainian war, here in New York City right now, we're facing an influx of Russian immigrants that have nothing, so they come to us. Everyone comes to us.
I haven't seen that on any of the news channels.
No, you won't see. That's the problem. You really won't. You won't see who our patients are because you don't see them on the street. Our patients are homeless moms and kids, so they look like us. They blend in. You don't really notice them when you're walking around on the streets. You don't really understand what's happened to them and how they've become where they've come to, and so they easily get forgotten in the conversation because, frankly, the panhandler is a more attractive topic. The panhandler who itches for money. He gets his picture taken. He's in the New York Post. Right. Everybody, says, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh."
I was actually thinking of you in the middle of the coldest day in winter. I was watching this woman with 2 kids, and one of the kids was just wearing flip-flops, and poorly clothed, and it's just kind of really.
Yeah,
really
it's tough. It's socks. I live here in the city, but we also have a house out in Pennsylvania. And there's a group of retired women that spend their summer and their fall, and they pull together socks and gloves and hats and scarves because the kids who come to see us at the clinics, they'll come in. You lose a scarf, you don't think anything of it, right? You go to the closet, you pull another scarf. Or if your kid loses a scarf at school, you don't think anything of it. You go get your kid another scarf. But our moms don't have any cash. So they can't do that.
Where do you raise the cash for the floating hospital?
I pass the hat. Listen, you're all look very wealthy to me. So I won't hesitate to hit every table up on the way up. But that's really what you have to do. It's a combination. Medicaid will cover part of a medical visit, and that's great, and I'll happily take it. Carolyn Maloney, who's here today, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, stand up, please. She was a champion for us in terms of raising federal money. In her tenure, in the 20 years that I've known her, she raised over $30 million of federal money to keep us going. And so you kind of, but there's a whole body of what we do. We send a dozen vans out every day to homeless shelters, domestic violence safe houses, and we collect the moms and kids, we bring them to care, and a lot of times, health care for us is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It can be vaccines, it could be something serious, but if the kid is hungry, you have to deal with the hunger. It's just part of what you have to do. And so it's a big challenge, and all of that is the generosity of New Yorkers.
So I know that the floating hospital doesn't float anymore. Is that something that you'd like to?
I am happy to accept a barge from any of you who have an extra one. It could be about 150 feet long, is great. We can get it refurbished. It's on our to-do list. We spoke to the mayor's office, and Mayor Adams was very enthusiastic about helping us get back on the water. It does matter. It does make a big difference. Taking a kid who has spent most of their lives in, either a shelter or public housing or something like that, getting them out for a day makes all the difference in the world for them, especially on the water. especially in the water.
And so on 9/11, it was retired after 9/11, right?
9/11 was our last day of service
Yeah,
as
wow.
a ship. The towers fell, the debris flew across the lower part of the island. We gave away everything on the ship, and the ship was towed over to the Navy yards. And so that was kind of our last, our last adventure was 9/11.
Sounds like you have a fantastic board that's really helping you out. I met a bunch of people from Hearst.
There's 2 tables of them. My board members can stand up, please. We can give them
Please.
Come on, don't be bashful. Thanks. We certainly have room for more. If there's any volunteers, it matters. Especially as your careers sunset and you look for something interesting to do. Congresswoman Maloney, she and I spoke, and when she finally said, "Okay, I'm going to be done," and it can be very rewarding working for a group of people that really make a difference in the lives of others.
Right. So right now you operate out of clinics in the Bronx and Queens?
Over in Long Island City, in Queens, we have clinics in basically most of the boroughs, except Staten Island.
Right.
Yeah.
This question is from Neil O'Dowd, and it's a big one. Is there a solution to the homelessness?
That's a tough one. We don't really venture into the area of single male and single female. So the panhandler that you would normally see on the street, that's really not our world. So we don't really venture an opinion on it. But the moms always want what's best for their kids, and they'll do whatever it takes. And so our view is, let's try to find them something close to reasonable housing. Let's try to support them so that they can become independent. Let's try to help them read. Let's try to help them, with some of the challenges they face and some of the socio-emotional challenges they face. Let's try to help them get past that so they can be independent, because that's really what they want at the end of the day. But it's interesting. It's one of those but for the grace of God arguments, because women today, and especially women with young children, and especially those who are faced with some level of interruption in their lives, whether it's eviction, whether it's eviction from house or losing their jobs, or facing some kind of domestic violence, a lot of them make a choice where they close the door, and they find themselves at that moment without a place to go. In the wealthier classes, those women have networks. They have friends and relatives and others who take them in, move them, get them to where they need to be. But our patients don't, and that's why you need us.
What can we do to help?
Check. I have credit. I have a permanent credit card swipe in my palm. But actually, it's really about thinking about from a career perspective. If you're looking to sunset your career, if you're looking to help, there are a million things that organizations like ours require. We need volunteers. We need board members. We need people to come to our events, which will be held here, which I'm very excited about on June 12th. And so it's really about helping a little bit to the extent that you can and the extent that you're comfortable doing. The Irish are always incredibly generous.
That's true. That's true. And I got this statistic from Siobhan Walsh that the Irish give more to third world relief or for relief of hunger than any other small nations. That's true, right, Siobhan Walsh? Anyway, but it is a long tradition of the Irish giving back. Is that the kind of family you grew up in, or?
It definitely is. My grandma Granahan was married to my grandfather, and he happened to be a postman during the 1930s and into the 1940s. And he was the only employed guy in the block, so they were used to feeding the block. Wow. And that block eventually became judges, the mayor, lawyers, tradesmen. So it's a tradition in that sense.
When was
Yeah.
the last time you were in Ireland?
I think so. Actually, my father is the Irish honorary ambassador, and he drags us there regularly and marches us around, you name it, fields and streams and farms, and he loves it, and we love
Great.
it.
I love it too. Well, let's hear it for Sean.
Thanks for that. Thank you. Appreciate it.